No one has ever succeeded in dethroning the crown. And why is that? A Rolex is as much a status symbol as it is a timepiece, as seen on the wrists of some of the coolest people in the world like James Bond, Mark Wahlberg, and even Paul Newman. And these watches don't come cheap. Some Rolexes sold for as much as $27,500 at a Sotheby's watch auction in August 2019. I know that seems like a lot for a watch, and it really is. But wait until you hear about Paul Newman's legendary Rolex Daytona from 1968. That particular watch was sold for a thumping $15.5 million in 2017. Even though that particular watch is truly one of a kind, and it was originally owned by Paul Newman, its hammer price reflected the merging factors that have made Rolex the longest ruling leader among rare timepieces in many respects. And while no new Rolex watches were released in 2020, fans of the crown speculated on what this most coveted of dial names may do next. The probability, given its own history, is high, even if it's one step at a time. What is it with Rolex that attracts both newcomers and established speculators searching for their first, maybe second, or even third, serious timepiece? It's all about the image. Rolex has developed perhaps the most sophisticated but still widely recognized personality in the horological universe, driven, in no specific order, by what you would call the 3 R's. Recognition. It consistently ranks near or at the top of just about every luxury brand survey. Reputation. It produces more certified chronometers than every other watchmaker. And resale. A Rolex is becoming more of an alternative currency in its own way, as everyone who has read the headlines knows, as a reasonably safe choice for those hoping for a return on investment should they opt to sell. It's why hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of articles have been written about this single brand. For the record, everything you need to know about Rolex can be summarized in only 9 words, which are conveniently displayed on the dial of even the most basic Rolex on the market. That's Rolex, Oyster, Superlative, Chronometer, Perpetual, Certified, Officially, Swiss-made. And what about the name? Hans Wilsdorf, the founder of Rolex, registered the firm in London 115 years ago. Its origins are disputed, but it's reasonable to believe Wilsdorf liked it because it's short, making it appear larger on smaller dials of the day, and because it's simple to read and utter. No small detail in today's multilingual consumer market. Wilsdorf was definitely a skilled marketer. In fact, he is claimed to have placed the first full-page watch advertisement in a newspaper. It commemorated Mercedes Glitz's first ever English woman channel swim in 1927, but it was created to draw attention to an even greater achievement: the first water and dust-proof watch, the Oyster. Mercedes had worn the watch, strapped it to her neck, on her second failed validation attempt, but thankfully for Wilsdorf and the majority of us, the water had much less impact on the watch than on the wearer after 10 hours being underwater. Mercedes Crossing solidified the reputation of the Oyster for reliability in the face of adversity, but its fame soared following the war, when pilots traded in their military watches for a Rolex. Wilsdorf returned the favor by including timepieces in the Red Cross parcels of Allied prisoners of war, seeking payment once the combat was over, implying which side he was on. Pilots became significant brand ambassadors after the war. Chuck Yeager wore one in 1947 when he broke the sound barrier. Another accomplished pilot, Pan Am's chief navigator Friedrich Libby, picked up the new GMT Master as the airplane's official watch in the early 1950s. Luckily, the GMT Master survived Pan Am's collapse around the period of the First Gulf War. Similar stories bring the Rolex story to light, right up to the current day, from the prototype Explorer in 1953 that surrounded Hillary and Tenzing's successful summit of Everest, despite the fact that Tenzing wore a Datejust, to the Submariner, the most iconic Rolex of all, the first wristwatch having the capability of descending to 100 meters and the dive watch to surpass between many amateurs and professionals alike. The Deep Sea, Rolex's mega submersible, in its highly professional form, has twice gone to the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean. Once with the company of Jacques Piccard in 1960, and lately on board in 2012, Titanic director James Cameron's Deep Sea Challenger. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Wilsdorf was keen to make the timepieces as efficient as possible, and in 1931, he produced the first self-winding mechanism, earning our dial the title of Perpetual. The perks are clear and relevant today as they were decades ago. The Datejust, The first self-winding wristwatch with a date window was introduced immediately after the war and was followed by the day-date model after a decade or more. The latter was the first watch to have the latest symbolic presidential bracelet, and it became an embodiment of executive chic in the 1970s and 1980s thanks to some rather fruity dial colors. These last two timepieces were also the first to feature the following four terms: officially, certified, and superlative chronometer, giving us not one but two guarantees of precision and dependability. Officially certified denotes that the Swiss Official Chronometer Testing Institute, or COSC, has successfully tested the movement, a procedure Rolex has imposed on since the 1920s for all of its chronometers, but which was only applied on all chronometer-rated watches in the early 1950s. Even better is Rolex's own superlative chronometer label, which indicates that each watch has completed a set of in-house tests to meet its own strict criteria, resulting in a degree of variance of only plus or minus 2 seconds every day, twice the accuracy stipulated by COSC. The final two words are the shortest but arguably the most significant. These are Swiss-made. But, in Rolex's case, it goes beyond merely adhering to a legally binding classification. Rather, it helps to inform the wearer that Rolex is a vertically integrated firm, unlike any other, having the capability of not just testing its own watches outside the scope of authorities like COSC, but also forging its own steel, blending its own oils, smelting its own gold, and so on. Rolex's reputation would be intact if the watches were simply durable and reliable. But what sets Rolex apart is the extent to which its unwavering commitment to quality is mirrored in the achievements of its numerous fans. These high achievers have been known as testimonies, seeing as Mercedes Glitz was featured in the first Rolex Oyster advertisement in the 1920s. And it's quite the roll call from the ground of motorsports alone, where Rolex presently sponsors F1. There's Sir Jackie Stewart, 3 times world champion, who commemorated his own half-century as a testimony in 2018. But it wasn't one of them who, though indirectly, led to one of Rolex's biggest, probably unbeatable achievements. Paul Newman owned numerous Cosmograph Daytona chronographs, but the most notable is the exotic dialed number he handed to his daughter's then-boyfriend in 1968, with the words, "Keeps good time." It was sold for about £14 million in 2017 at auction, the top price ever paid for a wristwatch. The sales shifted Rolex's fortunes once more, and even as demand for its iconic timepieces soars, the company is responding to market pressures in its own thoughtful way. This was made evident when the Crown, like its sibling brand Tudor, and Geneva neighbor Patek Philippe, as well as 2 other independently controlled watch businesses, said it would be departing Baselworld to focus on showcasing its upcoming collection at the Watches and Wonders Expo next spring. This has already prevented any big announcements, a position that has only fueled speculation about what might be coming next, while also increasing demand for the pieces unveiled at last year's final Baselworld presence. Here are the 3 favorite Rolex watches from the latest collection. Rolex Datejust 36. At £6,800, although its tool watches are popular at auction and forums, the classic Datejust model has a historical charm. The 36mm case and Jubilee bracelet have been updated, and inside is a caliber 32-35 movement with a 70-hour power reserve. Rolex Gmt Master 2 126710. At £7,750, Rolex made the right call and released it in the equally coveted Batman Blue and Black. Serochrome bezel form after debuting its new GMT Master 2 Pepsi in 40mm stainless steel on the dressier Jubilee bracelet at Baselworld. Well, good luck getting one in stores, but keep an eye out. A steel-cased GMT Master continues to be the main, unbeatable traveler's watch, as any pilot will tell you. Sea Dweller Ref 126603. At £13,300, Rolex doesn't make two-tone or bimetal watches, but if they did, the Sea Dweller in its unique yellow Rolesor, gold, or steel alloy combines deep-dive prowess with barstool glamour in a 43mm package. These are the reasons why we believe Rolex is the most desirable watch brand on the market, and its status is definitely no accident. We'd love to know what you guys think. Please let us know in the comments section below, and if you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.